Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Coffee with Craig, where we talk about firearms, policy, politics, movies, culture, you name it. We're talking about it right here on Coffee with Craig. Please take a moment to like and share this program so that your friends can know where you are and join in the conversation. Also, please take a moment, visit fpcgear.com. That's fpcgear.com. All sorts of cool swag that's available for you there. We have T-shirts, we have hoodies, we have coffee mugs, you name it. Check it out, some very cool designs, and you can know that every penny that you spend will go right back into the fight for our right to keep and bear arms. That's fpcgear.com. All right, let's get on to today's subject. We all know that you've heard me say this before. There's three types of lies. There's damn lies, and then there's statistics. And statistics are often used as a way in which, as an argument, to get us to give up our right to keep and bear arms. And to a large degree, for some reason, it seems to be working in some places, like here in California. But there was a major hole that was put in a study that was done in 2016. You guys might remember this. There was a study that was done by a gentleman named Mr. Adam Lankford. And it basically stated that the idea of mass shootings was uniquely American. In other words, this was largely an American phenomenon. And now, Mr. Lankford, who is a criminologist at the University of Alabama, basically stated in his study, he looked at 171 different countries. He basically stated that after looking at all of those studies, 1/3 of all mass shootings occur right here in the United States and are perpetrated by Americans. Here's a brief interview or brief snippet of an interview that he did relating to his study where he talks about it and talks about his findings.
A study done by University of Alabama professor Adam Lankford shows that from 1966 to 2012, 31% of the gunmen involved in mass shootings worldwide were American. An alarming statistic that leaves many questioning why the U.S. experiences so many mass shootings. Joining me now to continue this conversation is Adam Lankford, criminal justice professor at the University of Alabama, to further explain an issue plaguing the U.S. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now, from your study, you cite 31% of the gunmen involved in mass shootings globally are American. So what do you think about this, Professor?
Well, I think the question, of course, is why, right? And I did this study. I looked at 171 different countries, and I tried to find out statistically, looking at different cross-national variables, what makes the United States stand out. And far and away, what the mathematical models showed was the explanation is firearm ownership rate. In other words, firearms owned per capita. The United States has nearly double the firearms owned per capita and more than 200 million more firearms than any other country in the world. And that's really the explanation for why we have more public mass shooters than other countries.
Okay, so if you watch the rest of that interview, and you come to realize that Mr. Lankford is largely coming at this from the perspective of firearms and taking away firearms. Owning a firearm is not a why. Owning a firearm is not a why. It's not a reason why certain people do certain things. They don't do it simply because they own a firearm. They don't commit suicide simply because they own a firearm. They don't engage in mass shootings simply because they own a firearm. Yet throughout this entire interview, the only thing that the individual talks about, Mr. Lankford talks about, is firearm ownership. Now, one of the other things that was really kind of interesting about Mr. Lankford's book, and he didn't note this anywhere in the interview, I found it to be quite interesting, was when he started talking about the reasons why he believed that individuals here in America seemed more likely to either commit suicide or to engage in mass shootings. And what he noted what had to do with, with another thing that was kind of uniquely American. And that was, instead of using my words, I'll use his words. He wrote in his book, it may thus be lofty aspirations and broken dreams of a tiny percentage of American students and workers, combined with their mental health problems, distorted perceptions of victimization, delusions of grandeur and access to firearms that make them more likely to commit public mass shootings than people from other cultures. So, in other words, American exceptionalism is what he's saying. He's saying that American exceptionalism is the reason why, because people have this dream of what they can have. People come here in this country. People come to this country. People born in this country. We're told you can have these things if you work hard enough, if you focus yourself enough. You can have these things. But he's saying that, well, there are people who aren't achieving those dreams, so therefore they are going out and committing mass suicide. Now, I don't know that he's saying we should get rid of those lofty aspirations. I don't know if he's saying we should get rid of the whole idea of American exceptionalism, but he's definitely saying we should be taking away people's guns. Of that, I have no doubt that he is pushing in that particular direction. But getting back to Mr. Langford, or his study, if you want to call it that, it turns out that, he probably didn't do all of his homework. You guys all know Mr. John Lott. He is the president and founder of the Crime Prevention Research Center. He does a lot of research, as well as he spends time actually, looking at studies that are done by anti-gun individuals like Mr. Langford. And, he came up with some very, very interesting numbers. One of the things that he, in fact, came up with was first of all, understand that Adam Langford would not share his data. In other words, he would not say where he looked at 291 mass shootings, right, from 1966 until I think it was 1998 or 2012. And he said 291 mass shootings. Now, mind you, he wouldn't show anybody what mass shootings he looked at. He didn't share the data, which means that no one could take a look at it and determine, did all of the mass shootings meet the definition of mass shootings? We didn't know even if he hit all of them. So what John Lott set out to do was to take some time and duplicate the study. Unfortunately, he couldn't do it with the existing data, but he went and he looked and he did research into all of the shootings that took place. Most of which took place, he found over a much shorter period of time because the data is more readily available. By the way, that goes to show one of the problems that he found, that John Lott found, was that in the U.S. it was relatively easy to find that information, find that data, because it was available over at the CDC. It's available here. But when you start getting into some of these other countries, it started to become a little bit more problematic in terms of finding the data. Let me make a correction. It's 292 incidents. So when Mr. Lott went and he did his research, he found substantially more, a little over 1,400 such incidents. And he actually made it a point in his paper to actually chronicle 451-page appendix. He chronicled each and every shooting that was included in his study. So you can look at it was from 1990. He studied from 1998 until 2012 because before 1998 it was difficult to get data, in particular from other countries. But during that time, he found 1,491. 1,491. All right, so first of all, Mr. Langford, I hate to tell you this, but you missed a few. Just saying. You missed just a few. And by missing a few, you wound up overstating the percentage of mass shootings that occurred here in the United States. In fact, when you look at it, when you actually compare it to the entire number, the number of shootings in the United States actually is a little bit closer to 2.1%. 2.1%, maybe around 3% of all mass shootings occur here in the United States, which is interesting because we only make up 4.6% of the world population. So, but understand this, Mr. Langford, it's either one of two things. Either he was very, very lazy, and didn't want to go and do all of the research and find all of the information, which, judging by the number of media appearances that he's done, I'm going to guess that laziness is not the issue. I'm going to more say that he needed data that would support his already predetermined outcome, and that was that the United States is the capital of mass murder. That's all that he could do. That's all I can guess, is that was his perspective. That's what he desired to do from the very, very beginning, was to show that, was to claim that the United States has the world's most mass shootings. Because without that narrative, they really don't have an excuse or a reason to ban some of the firearms that they're looking to ban, to further restrict our rights. By making the United States the murder capital of the world, which, by the way, we are not. That would be Brazil. Sorry, folks who love Brazil, but 60,000 gun deaths in 1 year. We're not talking suicides. We're talking just straight, like, murders. You guys win that one far and away. Just saying. But it's not the United States. So anyway, but we know it's not the United States. But that's the only way in which they can push this particular narrative, is by lying and using statistics to lie. And this is the reason why it's important that we fund people like John Lott, like the Crime Prevention Research Center, because they're going to take a look at these studies. They're going to look at the data, and they're going to give us the real information, because we know folks like the Gun Violence Research Center at University of California, Davis, we know that they're anti-gun. We know they're going to put out information and data that is going to that is about taking away guns. We know the folks over at Johns Hopkins who are doing gun violence research. We know that they are anti-gun. We know that every town who puts money into these things, we know these folks are all anti-gun. And we know that they're not going to put out studies that are going to say that guns are good. We all know that the CDC is not doing firearm research because, well, they can't advocate for gun control. So if they can't advocate for gun control, they don't want to do the research. So we all know that. But it's important that we fund private entities like John Lott, like the Crime Prevention Research Center, in order to make sure that the real information about firearms and use of firearms and defensive use of firearms and how people are able to use them every day to protect themselves, protect the ones they love, and protect their property. That's what we need to be doing. That's the information we need to be getting out there. Anyway, folks, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. We very much appreciate you guys tuning in. Please remember to like and share these videos and tell your friends about the Firearms Policy Coalition. We are the home in the fight for civil rights. Got to use them or you're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.